This is BBC News. These are the top stories developing at 11. The local authority response to the Grenfell Tower fire was slow and lacked direction, according to one of the groups that led the aid effort after the disaster.
Organisations that never responded to emergencies of this nature before were having to step up. So they found themselves in a situation that they're not prepared for.
Belgian officials say the man who shot dead 2 policewomen and a student teacher in Liège yesterday killed a 4th person the day before. Ukraine's Prime Minister accuses Moscow of being behind the killing of Russian journalist and Kremlin critic Arkady Babchenko. British financier and Putin critic Bill Browder is detained temporarily in Spain on a Russian arrest warrant which turned out to be invalid. A joke in bad taste. Roseanne Barr apologizes for a racist tweet about a former Obama advisor. Her revived sitcom is cancelled. Also this hour, dealing with the danger from drones. Pilots will have to pass online safety tests or face fines to tackle the growing number of near misses with aircraft. Good morning, it's the 30th of May. I'm Joanna Gosling. Welcome to BBC Newsroom Live. An independent report has accused Kensington and Chelsea Council of being slow and lacking direction in the weeks following the Grenfell Tower disaster. The research commissioned by Muslim Aid suggests the authorities relied on voluntary organisations to help those in need and says the disaster should be a wake-up call about how to deal with future emergencies. Ben Ando reports. I'm afraid we've got a technical issue with that report. We will try to fix it and bring it to you. Meanwhile, the new edition of the London Review of Books is devoted to the Grenfell fire and its aftermath. Its editor-at-large, Andrew O'Hagan, spent 10 months talking to survivors, council workers, firefighters, local politicians and activists. He's been speaking to Michelle Hussein on BBC Radio 4's Today programme.
Albeit that there's an inquiry ongoing, I wanted to take an independent writer's stance, and the London Review of Books supported me for that whole year, and I had a team of researchers and we looked at everything. And I have to say that much of that understandable dismay and anger that we all started out with, it couldn't stand up alongside all the evidence that suggested that...
You mean anger at the council?
Yes, people wanted accusation to stand for evidence in this case, that to call out the leader and the deputy leader of the council as being somehow patently responsible for this didn't at all stand up to the evidence that these were people who you don't work for councils through some sense of noblesse oblige. I mean, people are away with fairies if they think that people who work for councils and housing hate the poor. They were accused of all sorts of things like that, and after months and months of evidence, I discovered that actually the council, despite reports even today, we just heard them in the news just now, the evidence goes the other way when you look at it. The council actually responded as well as they could under these tremendously difficult circumstances.
Once the fire had happened, but one of the key accusations that caused so much anger was about the cost of the refurbishment and the documents that were obtained by the BBC and others that showed that the council had tried to cut the costs of that refurbishment, and for example to replace the original zinc cladding with a more economical aluminium version. Now, I don't know if you got into that sort of detail.
I did get into it very deeply, and I have to say, Michelle, that's incorrect. You say the council, what you really mean is the tenant management organisation. People haven't been making the subtle distinction they have to make in this case, because you're talking about, in the end, possible corporate manslaughter charges.
That's Andrew O'Hagan with his views on what happened with the Grenfell Tower. Well, we can bring you now that report from our correspondent, Ben Ando.
In the chaotic aftermath of the blaze at Grenfell Tower, everyone wanted to give. Clothes, food, supplies, and hundreds of local people stepping forward with something just as precious, their time. But according to a report commissioned by Muslim Aid working with local charity groups, the response from the authorities, primarily Kensington and Chelsea Borough Council, was weak and lacked direction or coordination.
Please stop!
That, says the report, left local volunteers, often with no experience of aid work, trying their best to cope, but often overwhelmed.
There was complete chaos. I've been to many disasters around the world as an aid worker, and I really didn't expect to find this level of chaos and chaotic response in West London. So I think what we need to reflect on is that the local service actors, again, are the ones that are part and parcel of that provision and that response.
In response, the council said, "We are committed to learning the lessons from the Grenfell tragedy, and therefore we welcome this report as part of the learning process." The council said it couldn't comment further until the main public inquiry has concluded. But the charities say the lesson of this report is clear. In the aftermath of a disaster, the community itself should be put at the centre of the first response, not considered as an afterthought. Ben Ando, BBC News.
And we will have the very latest from the Grenfell inquiry from our correspondent Tom Burridge at 11:30 here on BBC News. The gunman who shot dead 2 police officers and a civilian in the Belgian city of Liège had killed someone the night before the attacks. The Belgian Interior Minister said the gunman had murdered a man, a former prisoner, whom he'd met while in jail. The attacker also took a female cleaner hostage at a school before being killed by police. Prosecutors say they are treating the attacks as terrorist murder. Well, let's go to our Europe correspondent, Damien Grammaticus. Damien, it's also emerged that the gunman was actually out on day release from prison. What questions are being asked about what's happened here?
Yes, there are serious questions being asked. The timeline, as you indicate, has now been expanded in this event. So it was already known yesterday that this man, he's been named in Belgian media as Benjamin Herman, had been released on this temporary one-night release from prison on Monday. What's now emerging is that he appears to have killed one man on Monday evening, as you're saying, a former colleague of his and cellmate, an inmate he was in prison with on Monday evening. Then on Tuesday in Liège, so slightly different location, he carried out his killing spree where he killed 2 policewomen and 1 passerby before being shot dead himself. Now, the questions around his release are becoming quite pointed because people are saying and looking at this and questioning why he was out at all if he was a danger. And the Interior Minister here, Jan Jambon, has been on Belgian radio saying he is questioning his own conscience because he felt responsible for the fact this man was on release when he carried out these killings.
What are they piecing together about the potential motives here?
Well, this is interesting. On the one hand, you have the prosecutors who have been giving a press conference in the last hour here saying that they are treating this as terrorist murder and attempted terrorist murder because of the nature of the events, because of the fact he targeted the police officers, because he seems to have shouted Allahu Akbar as he was doing it, because he seems to have been in contact with radicalized individuals in prison. But at the same time, they say they're keeping an open mind because 2 other possibilities are being looked at. One is that he was in prison for drugs offences, so was he on drugs at the time that he carried out these killings? Did that play a role? The other question is whether the fact that he carried out this killing on Monday evening may have contributed to his state of mind. So maybe, the Interior Minister suggested this, that this man was feeling hopeless about his prospects if he went back to prison and then carried out these killings.
Thank you very much, Damien. The Foreign Secretary Boris Johnson says he's appalled by the murder of a Russian investigative journalist in Ukraine. Arkady Babchenko, a critic of President Vladimir Putin, was shot dead in Ukraine's capital Kiev, where he was living in exile. Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has rejected suggestions that Moscow was behind the murder. Caroline Rigby reports.
Arkady Babchenko was one of Russia's best-known investigative journalists, an outspoken critic of the Kremlin as well as Russia's actions in Syria and eastern Ukraine. The 41-year-old claimed he'd suffered a campaign of harassment and feared for his life in his home country. That, he said, led him to move to Ukraine last year, and it was at his apartment block in the capital Kiev where the 41-year-old was shot and fatally wounded. His wife told police she was in the bathroom when she heard gunfire. She found her husband lying in a pool of his own blood. He'd been shot in the back and died in an ambulance a short time later.
Of course, it's about finding out who was behind it. And as I have said, it's too early to say. We see simply the Russian pattern there.
С нами Аркадий Бабченко.
Arkady Babchenko had hosted a program on the Ukrainian channel ATR TV. This is how the station broke news of his death. And the Ukrainian Prime Minister Volodymyr Groysman described the journalist as a true friend of Ukraine who told the world the truth about Russian aggression. An investigation is now underway into Mr. Babchenko's death. Police in Kiev say the evidence points to a targeted murder related to his work as a journalist. Caroline Rigby, BBC News.
Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has been speaking about the shooting and called the Ukrainian reaction very sad.
Another tragedy happened yesterday in Kiev. Arkady Babchenko was murdered, shot at the entrance of his own home. The Ukrainian Prime Minister is already talking about how it was done by Russian secret services. An investigation has not yet begun, but now it probably will. This fashion of conducting international affairs is very sad.
Well, we've also just had further condemnation from the Kremlin condemning the killing of Arkady Babchenko in Ukraine and calling for a real probe into his murder. OK, let's talk now to our correspondent Yuri Vendik here with me now. And Yuri, I know that you actually knew Arkady Babchenko.
Yes,
Tell us what your links were.
Well, we were both reporters, war reporters and conflict reporters. We met in one of the places in Ukraine, in fact, during the Maidan uprising. And then we met on several times. We have many friends in common. We were not close friends in no way, but yes, we knew each other. We exchanged messages. The last one was this January when I was in Prague, and he was there too, but he left one day early and didn't know that I called him to drink some beer. So yeah, that's where I knew him. And he was a reporter and he was a journalist. And as to the motives of the murder, everyone who knew him, all his friends and colleagues, they all agree that he had no business conflicts, no conflicts in his everyday life whatsoever. He was in his common life, he was a very nice and benign person. And all agree that no motives other than what he wrote and what he said on air, that there could be no motives for this murder.
So tell us more about what he wrote and said on air.
He was, you couldn't call him even an opposition activist because he was kind of a standalone opposition activist. He didn't join any political force in Russia before leaving, and even after leaving. He was not even a reporter. He was a soldier, former soldier. He went to the first Chechen war as a conscript, as a very young boy, and then he suffered under this combatant post-traumatic stress disorder, as he said himself, and he went to the second Chechen war as a volunteer soldier, as a sergeant, in the rank of sergeant. And after that he became very much disappointed in the state, in the authorities of Russia, and he became a very fierce critic of them, and so he became a journalist to that. And he wrote books, he wrote reports, but he was never, I would say, and I must admit that, everyone admits that he was never as a balanced and indifferent reporter. He was very much imbalanced and a very fierce critic of the authorities. But that is basically it. And even with the rest of the opposition, there is the serious rift within the Russian opposition between those who stay in Russia and try to do something within Russia in these circumstances and those who emigrated. Arkady emigrated just recently, so 2 years ago, just 1 year ago. He emigrated because of the threats to his security, to threats of criminal persecution and threats of physical violence, and he was at the forefront of that rift because they criticized, and constantly do that, they criticized each other. You escaped, you are in insecurity, say those who are there still in Russia. Now we all can see that they are not.
So the finger is being pointed at Russia over this. Russia is saying that we strongly condemn the killing and hope for a real and not a sham investigation into determining.
On the one hand, we don't have any evidence, so we can't state that yes, this was Russia, this was special services, as some of the Arkady's friends do, and colleagues there in Kiev and elsewhere. We can't state that. We don't have evidence. On the other hand, as I said, there could be no other motives than what he wrote and what he said. And also, commenting on those Russian statements, especially the statement by the investigative committee of Russia, who opened a criminal investigation into the murder, and the statement of the foreign ministry, who voiced their concern over killings of Russian journalists in Kiev, and Arkady is not the first, by the way. The first was Pavel Sheremet 2 years ago. Friends and colleagues of Arkady call these statements utter hypocrisy, to say the least of it.
Yuri Vendik, thank you very much. Well, Bill Browder, a prominent anti-corruption campaigner and critic of the Russian President Vladimir Putin, has been arrested but then released by police in Spain. The arrest took place at Moscow's request, but the warrant was then found to be invalid. Earlier, Mr. Browder put out an alert on Twitter. Urgent, just was arrested by Spanish police in Madrid on a Russian Interpol arrest warrant, going to the police station right now. In the last hour, the Foreign Secretary Boris Johnson said he'd spoken to Mr. Browder and was glad he'd been released. Mr. Johnson also said that Russia should concentrate on finding the killers of Mr. Browder's former lawyer, Sergei Magnitsky, who died in a Russian prison in 2009. 17 minutes past 11, an update on our headlines. A report into the aid response following the Grenfell Tower fire says the local authority was slow and lacked direction. A man who shot dead 3 people in Liège yesterday had already killed another person shortly after his release from prison, according to Belgian. And Ukraine's Prime Minister has accused Moscow of being behind the killing of the Russian journalist and Kremlin critic Arkady Babchenko. Russia says the claim is a smear.
And in sport, day 4 of the French Open is now underway, but it's Serena Williams' win yesterday that continues to dominate at Roland Garros. She said she felt like a superhero in that catsuit as she won her first Grand Slam match since becoming a mother. Disappointment for Scotland, who travelled all the way to Lima to take on Peru, but lost 2-0 in that international friendly last night. Northern Ireland drew 0-0 with Panama, who are in England's World Cup group. And 5-time Paralympic champion Ellie Simmonds says she almost quit swimming after losing her love for the sport. Simmonds went travelling after the 2016 Olympics in Rio and is now targeting further success, starting with the European Championships in August. I'll be back with more on those stories for you at 11:30. See you then.
The American actress Roseanne Barr has apologized after her popular TV show was cancelled following a racist comment she posted on Twitter. She'd compared a former aide to President Obama to an ape. The head of the ABC network said the comments were abhorrent, repugnant and inconsistent with its values. This report from our correspondent James Cook in Los Angeles contains flash photography.
Can I have some money? I don't know. Mom, can I have some money? I don't know. Can I have some money?
Roseanne Barr fronted a TV sensation.
Housekeeping!
A hugely popular sitcom from the 80s and 90s, which made a triumphant return this year.
Beep! That didn't go through. I heard a beep.
Millions tuned in to see a sympathetic portrayal of white, working-class, Trump-supporting America. It all came crashing down in a vitriolic Twitter tirade. Roseanne Barr's nastiest slur was aimed at an African-American political opponent. Muslim Brotherhood and Planet of the Apes had a baby equals BJ, she wrote, referring to Valerie Jarrett.
I think we have to turn it into a teaching moment. I'm fine. I'm worried about all the people out there who don't have a circle of friends and followers who come right to their defense.
Ms Barr also attacked Hillary Clinton and her daughter Chelsea, and she falsely called the billionaire investor George Soros, who as a Jewish child survived the occupation of Hungary, a Nazi. That tweet was shared by President Trump's son, Donald Jr. Ms Barr issued a partial apology, but it wasn't enough for ABC, which called her comments abhorrent, repugnant and inconsistent with our values. Roseanne's downfall was clearly her own doing, but it's likely to strengthen stereotypes in a divided America, with each side accusing the other of intolerance and hatred. James Cook, BBC News, Los Angeles.
Italy is at risk of a major financial crisis with implications for the rest of the European Union in the wake of the political crisis in Rome. The governor of Italy's central bank described the situation as very serious following the failure to form a new government and a resulting slump in global stock markets. Investors are said to be worried that another election could strengthen the Eurosceptic parties and destabilize the Eurozone. Our correspondent James Reynolds is in Rome. James, just bring us up to date with the latest.
That is almost an impossible thing to do, because by the time I finish this sentence things will have changed. But as things stand, Italy has a Prime Minister designate, Carlo Cottarelli, who is a pro-Euro economist, who is not yet being sworn in. And the reports suggest that he's not being sworn in because he is seeing if there's any chance of bringing back a populist government that was vetoed on Sunday. It was vetoed because of the possibility of having a Eurosceptic finance minister. In other words, the Prime Minister designate is seeing if he can avoid the chance of early elections.
If they can't find a way through right now, I mean, we were talking yesterday about elections being months away. Is it going to have to be much sooner than that?
Yesterday we started thinking elections might happen in early September. Yesterday evening theoretical elections had moved to the 29th of July. Today the latest theory is that they're going to try and keep elections away. It is almost impossible to know which one to predict, but I think there is a wider point. There's one party, one of the populists, the League Party, a hard-right party which has campaigned against illegal migration, which is rising in the polls. And it shows very little interest in the moment in trying to form a coalition with the current numbers. Its best bet may be to wait for an early election in the next few months and then rise up. For that reason, it may be difficult to put together a government involving the League, that populist party, right now.
And that is the party that wants to take Italy out of the Eurozone?
It's a very simple question, the right question, but it's a very difficult question to answer, because they've said many things in the past. It wasn't in their manifesto, and it wasn't in their potential government contract with another populist party submitted last week. But League Party members, League Party leaders have talked about their frustration with the euro. They've talked in the past about leaving the euro, and that's why a lot of Italians who are pro-EU have been so worried about that party.
James, thank you very much. Keep us updated. Let's take a look at some of today's other developing stories. A bus has crashed into dozens of cars which were stuck in traffic in Dartford in Kent, injuring 17 people. 25 vehicles were damaged in the incident yesterday evening. Passengers and drivers suffered minor injuries. A man has been arrested on suspicion of careless driving. Police investigating the disappearance of a British toddler in Germany 36 years ago will confirm later that an excavation near the spot she went missing has yielded no fresh information. 2-year-old Catrice Lee was on a shopping trip with her mother near a British Army base in the town of Paderborn. She has never been found. The Royal Military Police have spent the past 5 weeks digging at a riverbank in the town. Caroline Lucas is to step down as co-leader of the Green Party. Ms Lucas, the Greens' only MP, has been in charge alongside Jonathan Bartley since 2016. Under the party's rules, leaders serve 2-year terms. She says she wants to focus more on her constituency in Brighton. Well, for a full summary of the news, you can go to our website, bbc.co.uk/news. The government has suggested that bosses of companies which make nuisance calls could be personally fined up to £500,000. A consultation on changes to the law starts today. In October 2016, the government made a similar pledge, but the necessary legislation wasn't passed. Andy Moore reports.
There's no doubt that nuisance phone calls and texts are a major headache for many of us. The government is keen to clamp down. Individual companies can already be fined up to £500,000, but they often declare themselves bankrupt to avoid paying the penalty. Targeting the individuals behind those companies would close that loophole. The regulator Ofcom estimates that consumers were bombarded with 3.9 billion nuisance phone calls and texts last year. The Information Commissioner's Office has issued £17.8 million in fines since 2010, but only about half that sum, 54%, has been collected. This isn't the first time the government has announced a plan to fine individuals. Back in 2016, the government said there would be a change in the law in 2017, but that didn't happen.
I'm very sorry for the delay, but it was in part due to the fact that we then knew that we were going to have to strengthen the whole area of data protection. And we had to get the law through to strengthen data protection across the board, which does give additional powers in this area of nuisance calls as well.
The government is hoping it will have better luck second time around. Andy Moore, BBC News.
It is harder than it has been in living memory for a wrongly convicted person to overturn their conviction. That's according to a former Court of Appeal judge who was speaking to a BBC Panorama programme investigating the Criminal Cases Review Commission, the body which investigates miscarriages of justice. The programme also uncovers fresh evidence in 2 alleged wrongful convictions previously rejected by the Commission. Mark Daly has this report.
Kevin Lane spent almost 20 years in prison for a murder he's always said he didn't commit. Released on parole in 2015, he's rebuilding his life.
I'd love to be able to stand on the Court of Appeal steps and say, I told you I'd never done this. I told you at trial, I told you when I was convicted, and I've been telling you for 24 years now, and I've still been fighting it. It must mean something.
Kevin Lane was jailed in 1996 for the gangland murder of Robert McGill after Lane's palm print was found alongside a single particle of gunshot residue in a pipe in a car linked to the shooting. But experts Panorama spoke to think that gunshot evidence is now worthless.
In today's terms, there would be no evidential strength would be placed on the finding of a single particle. I certainly wouldn't have concluded that a gun had been placed within the pipe.
Kevin Lane now plans to submit a new application to the Criminal Cases Review Commission, a body many believe is failing. Panorama has obtained internal board minutes which reveal case managers there have large, sometimes unworkable portfolios. And there were concerns of a culture developing where finding new evidence in cases was seen as troublesome because of the work pressures. The CCRC can only refer a case to the Court of Appeal if there's a real possibility it will overturn a conviction, and its referral rate has dropped sharply over the past year. But a former Court of Appeal judge told Panorama the CCRC had become more cautious because the court had set the bar higher than in living memory.
It's become much more difficult for an appellant to succeed, and therefore that will no doubt influence them on what cases they send through.
You're a very high-profile former Court of Appeal judge,
yes.
And here you are saying that the test that's currently being applied at the Court of Appeal is wrong.
I'm saying that.
The CCRC denied it was too cautious and added, "Our workload has increased in recent years and our budgets have not. We've taken all the steps we can to make sure the quality of our investigations has not been adversely affected." Panorama also looks at the case of Eddie Guilfoyle, convicted of murdering his pregnant wife Paula in 1993. But he's always protested his innocence.
I haven't done it. I never killed my wife and baby. I never did it.
The CCRC said both Eddie Guilfoyle and Kevin Lane were welcome to make new submissions. Mark Daly, BBC News.
Almost 11:30. Let's catch up with the weather. Thomas has the details. Hi there, Thomas.
Hi there. Well, you know, the weather's not that bad everywhere across the country. In Northern Ireland and Western Scotland, it's beautiful at the moment. It's also going to be another very warm day there with temperatures in the mid-20s. But overall, across the country, the thunderstorm risk will continue over the next few days. We still have some downpours crossing the country at the moment through the Midlands, moving into northern parts of England at the moment, or later, a little bit later on. Some of these could still produce a bit of lightning, thunder and lightning. In the southeast, the sun will start coming out. But Belfast and Glasgow, by far the best of the weather today. Yesterday in Scotland, it was in the high 20s, I think the mid-20s today, so still warm enough. Cloudy and very muggy tonight. In the south, temperatures will be around 15 degrees. In the north, even quite warm, around 14 expected there in Edinburgh. And then tomorrow, further downpours on the way. Again, potential for some flash flooding even from these downpours as they affect southern and central areas of the UK. So take care tomorrow.